I'm Tayler Riggen, president of the Iowa Sportsman Club, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
So much editing on this podcast. Okay, dude, I finished that podcast last night at like 12:30. Nice. Let that be a threat to all flies everywhere.
I know we just criticized ourselves for swatting flies on a recent podcast, but we're back at it.
Here we are.
Old sins die hard.
They're attracted to, well, just you, Ken.
I was going to try and beat you to your own joke. You know, I think if we had an audience poll here on who is more likely to draw flies, I don't think you want to see what those results are, Nicholas.
Oh. I don't think so, dude.
Dude, you've like lived in a hole in the ground for like 6 months.
Dude,
you didn't have running water for even longer.
I've got a little sister who's going into 6th grade, and I told her like 2 days ago
Don't make me tell people about the pickle jar.
I don't even know. You're just making just garbage.
No, I'm not thinking.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I hear what you're saying. No. I've told my little sister that I haven't worn deodorant in like, I don't know, since high school, and she like couldn't believe it.
Just helping prove my point.
No, but look,
there's times. Well, how honest do we get here? Let's just say there's times Nicholas thinks he doesn't need deodorant. And
I know that I can smell that. That's not the point. And
unless I ate a bowl of onions for lunch,
here's the actual saga that's going on in my brain. For whatever reason, in high school and in college, my BO didn't smell. It was like whatever this magic thing. But my biological dad had that same thing. My mom was like, oh, yeah, your dad didn't smell until he was about 25. Well, come to about 25, all of a sudden, I start smelling a little more.
Body chemistry.
And so I've been telling myself, okay, I need to start wearing deodorant. And I just haven't.
You're not prepubescent.
I was going to say that usually happens when you hit puberty. So maybe 25 was.
No, so I used to like teach dance, and I go to these all night dance things, and we would dance all night. I'm not kidding. I would drink 1.5 gallons of water, and I wouldn't use the bathroom a single time, just literally sweating it all out. I'd go through 12 shirts, and then I'd be like, all right, someone smell me. And I didn't smell at all. Nothing. Even my shirts that were like gross, and the next day they wouldn't smell.
So you just put it back on?
No. All right, that's enough. That's enough of Nicholas's hygiene. We got to actually start a podcast worth people's time. Well, man, Tayler, it's a huge deal that you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, I got a question for you. Yeah. Iowa Sportsman Club. We're going to get into why it started, but what I first want to ask you is, Iowa is known as the whitetail state. Right, I learned that from Kent, not because I've hunted there. Sure. I've actually since been more vocal about not hunting on the podcast. I've had a bunch of people reach out, and be like, "Hey, can I take you hunting?" So, the Kent and I have a deal. We got a 1-for-1 deal going on with hunting. Kent's regretting it.
I almost think you're in the deficit now because I played video games with you last week.
Oh, that's true. He did play video games for his birthday,
and I beat him.
Yep, he did.
In Mario Kart.
Oh,
it was kind of a big deal. Yep. I don't play Mario Kart that much, but it was fun.
I haven't played it in decades.
It was his birthday. I wasn't going to try that hard, right? Sure. Try to like pan it off. No, he beat me fair and square. So it's known as the whitetail state. Other states could be the whitetail state.
Oh, 100%.
But they have made some decisions that were poor, or their legislation did. For Iowa, what is our biggest threat of no longer being the whitetail state that it is?
I mean, it's the legislation, 100%. We can start with just looking at Iowa from an aerial view, right? Like, we don't have the habitat, and we won't. We're farmer first. I think it's, if I could be wrong here, but I think it's 36 million acres in Iowa, and 31 million is agriculture.
And 24 is row crop, I believe.
But then
there's cattle and all sorts of other stuff.
And so, there is something to be said when you go into northern Iowa. There is, I guess, some habitat that a cornfield provides at portions of the year, but for the most part, we just don't have the acres, the amount of habitat to really be what we are now if the legislation looks like all these other states around us. So it really is the legislation. We can scratch and claw and get every little bit of habitat added that we can. Every little bit counts. But the only reason that Iowa is, let's not even talk about pumping out big bucks. The only reason that Iowa has good age structure within the whitetail herd is because of our legislation. So
the threat is legislation. Okay, I'm going to push on that a little bit. What does that mean? Because a lot of legislation is driven by lobbyists. A lot of legislation is driven. It's not usually like people go into the legislation and they're like, this is what I'm going to do. Bop, bop, bop. They go in and then they hear from other experts or lobbyists or special interest groups. That's one Skip Sly likes to talk about, the special interest groups. Right. So who is guiding the legislator? Is it someone in the legislation? Is it outside forces?
Well, some of both. What I would say is, and I'm by no means an expert on this, but I have had my eyes opened at my time in the Capitol building and watching how things go and having discussions and building relationships with some of our state legislators. I've told people 100 times, we have it really good in Iowa, that we do have legislators that can make common sense decisions. When presented with the truth on both sides, they can still make a common sense decision. We're not Chicago or LA or some of these crazy things that can happen. So we do have really a great legislation here in Iowa. But with that said,
that's a really good point. I want to camp out on that for a second. The size of our state allows a group like ISC to even have the time of day to go and make. I never thought of that, but in Illinois, it would be so disconnected from.
Yeah, and that's the battle that these other states fight in some instances. Like you go to Illinois should be leagues ahead of Iowa. Yeah. As far as hunting goes. Better habitat, more habitat, but the legislative piece. I mean, can you imagine an Iowa Sportsman Club type group going to Chicago to try and fight for these things?
Waiting in line.
That's an issue just across the culture of the Midwest and really the whole United States, rural versus urban. Yeah. It's becoming more and more of a divide. People talk about race or they talk about gender or whatever, but it is the trend is actually rural versus urban cultures
in the Midwest.
Yeah. So what I would say is we still have great legislators that can make a common sense decision, but the truth is, and they'll tell you it too, most of them don't know anything about hunting or about wildlife conservation. I mean, really, a lot of them are there, especially in Iowa. We are farming first and always will be. So is the Iowa Sportsman's Club. But in that situation, they don't always mesh together, farming and wildlife conservation. They can, but in those situations, a lot of our legislators are in that place because they understand the economy of Iowa and that, but they don't really know what they're talking about when they're talking about wildlife conservation and what that means. And so I've had my eyes opened when you go up there and you realize, wait, this is how we're making these decisions? Like, these three people don't have any idea what they're talking about, but those three people are the one that are going to make the decision at the end of this day, And so it really, really is important. It not just for the Iowa Sportsman's Club, but other associations, IBA, and we've got a large list of nonprofits here in the state that would fight on the behalf of wildlife and hunting and fishing. And but it is important that we go there and voice our opinion so that they can understand both sides of the argument.
And they listen to you?
Yeah. And that doesn't mean everything goes our way.
Yeah. What arguments have you been making while you're there? Like, could you give a specific one?
Yeah. So, last year, we go up to a ton of different subcommittee meetings. I'll walk a little bit through the process. I don't know if everybody knows, but
I do not.
But when a bill comes up, there could be any number of legislators that bring a bill, and it might really just start with they were home on the weekend and their friend said, you need to do this and here's why.
Sure.
And then they come and they work to get a bill written up and bring it to the table and whatever. The first place that's going to have to go, if it's going to make it into law, is to a subcommittee meeting. They'll behind the scenes talk it over, but that subcommittee meeting is the first public place where you can show up and voice your opinion. So you get to see all these pieces of legislation coming through and you can read them on your own at home. It's all public. But if there's something that you feel very strongly about, anybody can just show up to the subcommittee meeting. It doesn't have to be just us, but but you show up there and voice your opinion so that they know, okay, hold on a minute. I talked to Joe on Saturday. He said we should do this. Now I'm hearing there's actually more to this story, and I'm learning and that kind of thing. So showing up in person to those things means a lot. And I know that most people, myself included, have full-time jobs, and these committee meetings happen during work hours, and so not everybody can show up. I understand that, but that's where a group like the Iowa Sportsman Club shines. Is we have a salaried lobbyist, we have a board full of people that are, for the most part, flexible, and we can show up there anytime at the drop of a hat. A lot of this stuff comes out the night before. They're going to take it to subcommittee the next day, and it's like, or something changes, and at 9:00 we're texting each other going, hey, I don't know what you guys were doing, but we got to be at the Capitol tomorrow. And so
I've gotten one of those texts from somebody in the ISC at like 10 p.m. once.
Oh yeah.
It's like, hey, send this out to everybody that you can.
And that's also, I'm making it sound like people have to be there in person. That's emails and phone calls too. It does go a long way. It sounds harped on or whatever, but it does go a long way if we send out a mass email to our followers or our membership, and 40 people email the same legislator at 10 p.m. the night before that they're going to vote on this the next day. It does go a long ways, because it is hard. I mean, think about it. If it was you, it would be hard for me to walk in there having gotten 50 angry emails about this and go, yeah, I'm going to just throw that to the side. I don't really care about what those people think. That would be hard.
They at least can't say, well, I never heard from anybody on this. And
so yeah, I mean, I kind of strayed off topic there a little bit. You asked about like an example. So last year, they had some legislation written up about increasing depredation tags and increasing a depredation season in the second half of January. It basically took it all the way through the end of January 31. As wildlife conservationists, we look at that and go, well, we're already killing a lot of deer. If we're going to add any days for depredation, they can use a depredation tag all throughout the entire season. We don't really need more days. We have more days to hunt here than we need. I would argue that we could probably use less, but the time frame of mid to late January is just a really hard time to be a whitetail in Iowa. There's no food left. We've planted the entire state in corn and beans, and they have great food until it gets picked in October, November. By the time January comes around and it's cold, there's not much left for them to eat. And going out there and just wiping out deer is hard on a herd. And they herd up in January to where if you go out to a field that does have food or, a food plot or whatever it might be, you might see 100 deer out there because they've all yarded up into the one place that they can find food. And in that situation, somebody's going to go, well, I need depredation tags. I need to look at all these deer. I need to kill them all. There's too many. But what you're seeing is every deer in a 3-mile radius is yarded up here in one spot,
Wow. So, that's the best explanation I've ever heard.
And so what they wanted to do is have those tags go through the end of January. And for us, that was like, no, we don't need more killing. We're coming off EHD terrible. The herd is way down. In 2006, I think, is the year that they started doing like the e-sign-in when you shoot a deer. So that's kind of where we start our statistics from, because before that it was just a different modeling system, right? But and stuff like that, right? Since 2006, or in 2006, we were killing about 200,000 deer a year in Iowa. Now we're down to about half that. And that's not because people in Iowa decided they don't like shooting deer anymore. It's because our numbers are that far down. And so we didn't need an extra 2 weeks at the end of the season to manage the deer herd, right? And so we showed up, and I will say, I don't know how far to push this either, but we fight some of the same people over and over again, some of the same lobbyists and groups. And
why are you having to fight them over and over? What's their backing? What do they get out of it?
Fewer deer. I don't know.
You want me to say it for you?
Right. And in that situation too, I think you guys probably know who I'm talking about, but in that situation too, we like to work with everybody as much as we can, and we do work with all groups across the board to kind of find some common sense, common ground, right? So you don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but the truth is, we go to these meetings and we'll have 35, 40 people show up on our side, and then you've got some lobbyists, 2 or 3 against us, right?
Yeah.
But they pull a lot of weight. So, in that situation, we had a bunch of people there, and we walked into it. I should back up too. On a subcommittee meeting, there's basically 3 legislators that you're talking to, whether you're in the House or the Senate. You're going to go into a subcommittee meeting and talk to 3 of them. 2 of them come from the majority side, whoever's in power, and 1 comes from the minority side. So right now, the Republicans are in a majority everywhere. So we go into this subcommittee meeting. There's 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat that we're talking to about this. Historically, Republicans aren't, great on wildlife conservation in Iowa, especially when it comes to deer. And deer are kind of looked at as something that's a drag on the profit and loss statement.
They're looked at as vermin. Yeah.
Right. And so we go into that going, well, we're kind of up against it here. We really don't want an extra 2 weeks of season. This is important for us. We show up with 40 people. And the senator that wrote that bill, that brought that bill, was one of the 3. So he's voting for it. Mm-hmm. But we were able to go in there and flip the other 2 and knock it out right at subcommittee level.
So they, awesome. Even though there were probably strong lobbyists that were paid very well on the other side.
Yep.
Man, and what was their argument? Just, look, our farmers are losing money.
What's interesting about that? Yeah, that's the argument. What's interesting about that scenario is that, we don't go, the Iowa Sportsman Club doesn't show up at the Iowa Corn Bill meetings. That's not our lane.
Right.
The deer bills, the wildlife conservation bills, it's not really their lane either, but they show up to everyone.
Yep.
They come, basically, the whole idea is fewer deer, no deer would be great for them, because they think it's hurting their profit and loss statement. It really isn't. And we've had studies done on this to prove it. It's really not affecting anything, especially where we're at deer numbers now. But they show up because that's what they're paid to be. I mean, they are paid to show up and try and get fewer deer on the landscape. That's why they're there.
Well, and something that I would like to point out is if I went to Kent's house, started selling his stuff on Facebook Marketplace, pulling the stuff out of his house and selling it, and then he showed up and was like, whoa, let's say he showed up and started eating the food out of his own fridge. And I'm like, I was going to sell that food on Facebook Marketplace. You're getting in the middle of my P&L, even though it was his to begin with. That's what we're doing with deer.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Hey, all this habitat that you have, we're totally limiting you on having any habitat. And then the second you try to come back and survive, we're like, you're getting in the middle of our P&L. But I also understand.
And a deeper level to what I really like that analogy, Nicholas, because the wildlife are nobodies. It's a publicly held thing, and
they don't belong to anyone. They belong to everyone.
Right, exactly. And so, in order for them to say, no, we need to get rid of the public's resource so that our profits increase. It fits perfectly with your analogy there.
Yeah. Anyway, so that just a thought there. So that was something that you guys went in and were able to help strike down.
Yep. Right. And the funny thing about that is, and I'm sure we'll get to it later too, the reason why the Iowa Sportsman's Club started, but the reason the Iowa Sportsman's Club started was my frustrations with some legislators, and one of them was on that subcommittee in that example I just gave that normally would have said, no deer, we want to kill all the deer. And he was able to sit there, listen to both sides of the argument, have a level head and say, you know what? In this situation, you're right. We don't need that. And that's what I mean about Iowa, and that you can take somebody who's staunchly on one side of an argument and still have a conversation and have them go, okay, well, let me rethink this.
Yeah, good for
I
him
maybe didn't take the exact
willing to
stance on
do
all.
that.
Yeah.
Not letting pride get in the way.
And maybe I'm wrong about this. I'm just going to drop his name but you know what's kind of a bummer? So you're kind of helping lead the charge. You've got support from some influential people. I think that's awesome. You know who really should be at the lead of the charge, but they've kind of kneecapped his power on anything? Todd Bogenschutz and Jace Elliott from the DNR. And I'm not criticizing anything they're doing. They're just the way that the Iowa legislature interacts with the DNR is like they should be there right there. Like, this is the data.
And to be clear, neither of those people complained to us.
No,
that
they've never said anything.
No, never said anything.
They do their
like
job really well, and they understand the
and
role.
Jace,
But
Jace specifically, a very intelligent guy. He knows his stuff. And we can go back years to where that changed. Right, we. As a state, we have kind of
Branstad administration, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is Terry, was an advocate for hunting. Terry's son Marcus is one of our great friends. He's a huge hunter, and at the time, that change was made because I think there was a lot of public sentiment about, well, we don't like what the DNR's doing, or they saw an issue that they, wanted to take power away from the DNR and give it to the legislation. Say, this is where we're going to set our rules, which at the time I think was done all in, good faith, and they were trying to make a good decision. At the end of that, though, you are taking it from people that maybe know, like Jace, know an incredible amount about wildlife biology and what it looks like across the state, and giving the decision-making power to somebody who we're talking about, well, I have 6 deer in my yard every night. There must be a lot of them. We're just taking the decision-making power and giving it to somebody that maybe doesn't know the topic as well as Jace does.
Right. And what we're paying as a state, what we're paying Jace to have that knowledge.
Yeah. And again, this is not coming from the DNR. This is from me specifically. I would love to see those guys have more of a say in our legislation.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So tons of talk on whitetail. Do you ever go to the Capitol for any other speeches? What do you got going on in other speeches at the Capitol?
That's been a frustration for me. Because
what do you mean? What's been a frustration?
Well, okay, so if you look at Iowa, like the IBA is a phenomenal
Iowa
organization.
Bowhunters Association.
Iowa Bowhunters Association. I'm a life member. The Iowa Sportsman Club is a member of the IBA. We support, them in basically everything they do, and we have a lot of conversations back and forth. We are on the same page with a lot of stuff. But also, they have a lane too. That like they've picked bow hunting specifically, and they kind of focus on those topics. They show up for a lot of wildlife conservation stuff too. But the Iowa Sportsman Club is supposed to be, we're concerned about deer, but really we're concerned about wildlife habitat for turkey, quail, pheasant. We're concerned about our fisheries and water quality, and we're trying to be an overarching group that can cover every corner of the state and every species in the state, and not even just game animals, all wildlife. But we spend so much time on deer, and I got frustrated this last year, I think, and said, I wish that we would just leave deer alone for a year. Just take a year off. Just don't change anything. And let us focus on some of these other things that we want to knock off. But we can't, because every single year there's 30 new deer bills that we're trying to change the legislation somehow.
Is that because of the our friend Doug refers to it as the whitetail industrial complex? Specifically, I'm thinking of crossbows, right?
For sure.
Where there's a financial gain for the ag industrial complex to have less deer. For different aspects, not many really, but a few, mostly crossbows. Right now, what percent, if you had to guess, of Iowa deer hunters own a crossbow? Maybe I'd say it's less than 5%.
Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't be very many.
So if you are a gold miner and you are looking at, well, what about that spot over there? That looks like there's a lot of gold over there, but no one's mining it. that's how they're looking at Iowa and
in
any
the
other
hunting
state.
space. We would call that a target-rich environment.
Yes, that's
Iowa
right.
is if you're looking to sell
Right.
crossbows. Yeah,
Right. If all of a sudden now a crossbow becomes you can use crossbows here if you are disabled, if you have you can use it during the late muzzleloader season as opposed to using a muzzleloader. There's ways you can use one, but specifically the desire to use them during the normal archery season. A lot of other states, a lot of our neighbors have done that. Wisconsin, Minnesota, I think too.
Yeah, Minnesota does. Yeah,
Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, I think as well. They're not a neighbor, but they're close. I believe, and Nebraska too. I think all those places have allowed for crossbow usage during the normal archery season. And can you imagine the sales implications that is for these companies? So on the other side of it, there's a money-making motivator to try and sell more archery crossbow equipment. And
Can you get a handicap bow, a crossbow tag or license?
Right. So it's actually, this is kind of one of those gray area laws too that is a little bit silly to me, but you got to get a doctor's note.
Yeah.
And I know several people that, hey doc, my shoulder, and get it. And okay, now I'm crossbow hunting. I mean, it's hard to prove otherwise if you've got a doctor's note, right? So that's a little bit of a gray area law too. But to your point, the crossbows. Well,
I guess what I'm saying is that what keeps fueling this deer always being on the table for having to deal with legislation.
So like this year, we really didn't deal with the crossbow lobby that much. I think we're at a place where everybody understands the argument now and understands why it would be a terrible thing for Iowa. Yeah. I would also note that those crossbow companies are not based in Iowa. So what do they
exactly?
care?
Yeah, it's not their resource.
But anyway, no, I mean, like when I mentioned 35 plus new deer bills, I mean it's constant from lobbyists against us it's just a new bill every year. Or I brought this bill last year because I want fewer deer and it didn't go anywhere. Now I've changed some wording and kind of trying to come around another way, and I'm going to bring it back. And you just keep bringing it back. And so, the frustration is like, man, I don't want to work on deer stuff all the time. I'm very passionate about the whitetail deer, but I don't want to work on that all the time.
Why are people attacking deer more than pheasants or,
Well, they can't see a pheasant out there eating their corn or beans. And I would say,
or raccoons, for that matter.
Right. I was just going to go there. The real argument that we should be talking about is raccoons. If we can all get on the same page with something, it ought to be that. Because if a farmer knew, I think there's a misconception when a farmer's driving his combine, picking his corn, and he sees a big area that's all knocked down, they get pissed about the deer. Deer are out here. That's not how deer eat.
Right.
Deer don't knock corn stalks down. That's not how they eat. If you were out there and watching them, you would realize the deer, if it's on the ground, will eat it off the ground, but it got there by a coon pulling it down. Raccoons are the ones that are out there pulling all the stalks down in a big area. And we have
they're attacking them at their most vulnerable state too. So the ear never fully develops. Right.
And the raccoon numbers in Iowa are astronomical. Nobody traps anymore, right? The furs aren't worth anything. But if we could get on the same page with something, it would be that, because all outdoorsmen should know that raccoons are one of the biggest nest predators for any ground nesting bird, turkeys, quail, pheasant. Our numbers would be much better if we had way lower raccoon numbers, and the farmers wouldn't see that knocked down corn all the time. We should be able to get on the same page with that. But in that same sentence, it's really hard to get any legislator to write that. And we've pushed that for several years. South Dakota does a great job that they have a bounty, raccoon bounty, that you get paid to go trap or shoot raccoons.
Who pays for that? Is there like a tax?
The state does.
Okay. It'd be interesting to have like who monetarily benefits from not having as many raccoons. So almost like, it'd be interesting, a shop building tax. It's not very high. $25 a year. If you have a shop building, per building, you pay 20. Because raccoons, they're going to do damage on corn, but my goodness, they get up in those attics and stuff like that. And so the people who monetarily benefit, I think, should be paying for those raccoons. And it can be through the government. That's fine. But I don't want... I'm okay with some resource allocation, but now you've got tons of people in some urban area where there's no raccoons paying for, the benefit.
Well, and again, trying to wrap this whole thing up, I kind of want to make a point there and say, like, we spend all our time fighting this stuff off, right? And I have people tell me all the time, like, man, why are you guys so concerned about that? What you should be doing is focusing on this wildlife aspect or this raccoon. I agree. We shouldn't be talking about this, but we have to, because the bills are being brought and we have to show up to fight against it. Yeah. This is what we have to be talking about. I can't get... The only way that I can talk about the stuff that I'm excited about, like getting rid of nest predators or lowering their numbers, is I have to get a legislator excited to write the bill and bring the bill forward.
And that's, I'm sure, a bunch of work for them, so it's hard to get excited about.
A lot of that is tough to do if it's not a big ticket item like deer, you know? And so that's where
I've
had my eyes open.
If you had your way, what are one or two things you would go after that you would love to see improvement on at a state level? Because I know I'd love to see stuff on a federal level, but
sure. I think overall the two biggest issues facing Iowa as far as outdoorsmen go, hunters and anglers, is lack of habitat, lack of access to quality habitat. So when we talk about like a deer bill or what, I've realized through the last few years that if we just left the legislation in Iowa the way it is right now and didn't change the legislation at all, we would be fine. We already have what I think is about the greatest whitetail hunting opportunity in the world.
Oh yeah.
And that's because of the legislation. If we just left it, we'd be fine. What I would like to focus on are where in that 31 million acres of ag ground we can pick out the little pieces that you aren't going to notice, maybe the poor ground, and create some more habitat, and in turn create more access. I think those are the two things that we would focus on and focus our efforts on solely. If you would tell me we're just going to leave all the legislation as it is.
Yeah.
But you think about it.
Giving me all sorts of ideas right now.
I know you guys have talked about buffer strips along our waterways a lot.
That's exactly it.
That's a perfect example of something that farmers, Iowans benefit from.
Yep.
They get paid. It's not ground that should be farmed anyway.
Right.
And it benefits wildlife. And
our water quality.
I don't know anyone that should be against that. I think everyone should be for that. You talk about the iWill program, and how for
put some money in it.
15 years, this has been what Iowans want, and we can't get it funded.
Yeah.
Right.
Why can't we get it funded? This is what Iowans voted for.
Right.
That would be one of the first things that I would say. These are bipartisan. We're all on the same page here. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
But we have to pay for it too.
I think Iowa governor race is going to, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert. I think it's going to come down to who's willing to say something about water quality. Right? Because, and I've told people this, you're not fighting. I don't feel like you're fighting against the current government. I feel like you're fighting against the special interest groups behind the government. And those the big ones in Iowa right now they don't want us sniffing the water quality. They don't want us monitoring it. Yep. I mean, that's a huge deal. 500 from the University of Iowa, they've got 500 and some odd monitors. And those, for the most part, are the monitors that we use to track how healthy is our state's water. Obviously, Des Moines Water Works has one, and every single treatment center has one. But this is an organization that's just tracking it across Iowa, and they just totally got the funding got ripped out from under them. So we have a water quality issue, and in next year, if we don't change anything, no one will talk about it because there won't be any data. Right. And so the point being, like iWells and some in the water quality issue, I think are huge, could be huge benefits, net positives to Iowa, and we're trading them away for profits for 12 years, you know, or whatever. Like it doesn't pan out, and it's so disappointing, even from a business perspective.
In a lot of those situations, that stuff, those waterways or buffers along the waterways don't get planted because it's looked at as, well, I'm losing acreage or I'm losing money to do that. With this program, you wouldn't have to. But what's interesting is, like, I live in Mahaska County, right by the Des Moines River. There's several places where you can see the farmer ran their planter right down the edge of the bank, and the last coulter on the end was hanging out over because the row, the dirt's falling away, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
or the I've seen it where those outside rows have actually collapsed since planting.
And
I've seen 3 rows.
That happens every year. Every year. So it's like, well,
what is going through their brain? Are they like, what business goes, oh man, in 12 years, we're certainly going bankrupt, but I'm getting an extra 0.01% on my return this year, where you could just put in CRP and break even on that land and then just profit on. I just do not understand that. Forget all the conservation, forget all of the habitat, forget any sort of good virtue or anything. Look, guys, that is terrible business. I think about business about 80% of my waking day, and that is terrible, terrible business. It bothers the freak out of me. Oh, man, sorry. Thanks for letting me go on that rant. My coffee's kicking in. All right, so the Iowa Sportsman Club, you guys are not just fighting for white-tailed deer. You're fighting for habitat at the state level. You're fighting for where the needle actually gets moved. You're doing an incredible job. People know why they should give a crap about this organization. So now tell me, where did this organization come from? And I do it in that order is because a lot of people start with these origin stories, and I'll even listen to these podcasts. I'm like, I don't care about this. I don't care about this person. Why are you telling me their origin story?
Well, nobody does care about me. Nobody knows who I am.
Well, they should.
That's kind of by design. But
but we're trying to keep you alive.
I think I've tried to look you up on Instagram before, and I came up with
I'll say that now. We've been talking about lobbyist groups. If I'm hanging in my closet tomorrow, I didn't do it.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm happy.
You need a secret journal where you tell your wife, like, all right, if I die in a car accident, you go to this journal.
Okay, so where did the Iowa Sportsman's Club start? Kind of came out of thin air, I guess. Really, I was in a place in life where I was so concerned about some of the stuff that I was seeing come out of our legislation concerning wildlife. It's a big passion of mine, always has been since I was a little kid.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back there?
So I have several relationships with legislators prior to the Iowa Sportsman's Club, family, friends, kind of stuff. And I was speaking with one individual because I hunt and fish a lot, love to. He would ask me my opinion on how we should manage the deer herd. He was seeing things at the Capitol. He was trying to get some insight as a legislator to what hunters and outdoorsmen think. And so he asked me how we should be managing the deer herd because I had given him some feedback that I was not liking what I was seeing. And so when he asked me for my opinion, I went home and wrote a 4-page document on how we should manage our deer herd in Iowa, not for just numbers, but for age structure,
health
of the herd. But also keeping in mind farmers wanting to put money in their pocket and keeping in mind that we have to keep money flowing in via tag sales to the government, to pay for conservation. And so I wrote up a document that basically said, this gives us quality deer herd, quality age structure. It lets you manage the pinpoint pocket areas where the population's really high and where the population's really low, not just we're going to issue fewer doe tags in this countywide, and kind of put together this whole program and increase revenue coming into the state. And from what I could tell, I think when I brought it back, it was read, but I was so naive at the time to think that I could give them this awesome document with all this information and have something actually get done. Right. But I also then was very frustrated when none of it got implemented or none of it got brought up. Right. And so I was so frustrated at the time thinking, man, if I know these people, like I can go sit in their living room any afternoon I want and vent and get this off my chest, but nothing's ever going to get done. whose voice could actually be heard as far as outdoorsmen go, you know, because not everybody can call a legislator up on their cell phone and get them to answer, right? And I was so frustrated with that, and I was talking to Skip Sly at the time, and really back then Skip and I didn't know each other that well. Just I knew who he was and you know what he stood for. But I was talking to him on the phone, you know, and he made the comment, well, if you're so frustrated about it doesn't cost that much. Just hire a lobbyist and whatever. Yeah, okay, Skip. Like, I you know, I can't afford to pay somebody else's salary. Right?
I've heard that phrase before. Okay, Skip.
But it kind of like stuck in my head, and I thought, okay, you know, how can we do this? Maybe I could just throw my efforts behind the IBA. Like I said, great group, but I wanted something more widely encompassing, right? And then those two combined at the exact same time. One of my friends, Bruce Borowski, he was a regional director at NWTF. He moved to become the director of chapter development with Dallas Safari Club. And I was talking to him a little bit, and he hunts Iowa, knows Iowa, but he's from Colorado. And I was talking to him a little bit, and he said, well, if you want, I can help you get started. And okay, how does that work? And so he introduced me to the program that DSC runs, and then they run their chapters a little bit. So we are a chapter of Dallas Safari Club. The reason for that is in my full-time job for GSM, which again maybe nobody knows what that is, but we own and manufacture about 55 brands in the hunting, shooting, fishing space. So I'm in sales. I'm a regional sales manager for GSM.
What's some of their biggest brands?
Like Muddy Outdoors, box blinds and tree stands, stealth cam, trail cameras, just to name a couple, Boss Buck feeders, and but we sell pretty much anything hunting, shooting, fishing that doesn't have a trigger. We don't sell guns or ammo, but pretty much anything else you need to hunt, shoot, or fish, we sell that. So, or manufacture that. So that's my full-time job. In that line of work, I get to meet a lot of people, and I also work directly with all the conservation groups. So NWTF is my account. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is my account. I got to
ask a question that I know all the listeners are going to have right now.
Yeah.
Do you ever fear about the crossbow thing conflicting with... Well, because right now you guys don't sell crossbows,
we don't sell
right?
them.
But if they were to ever acquire a crossbow brand,
I would make somebody else take Iowa as the region, because I'm not selling one single crossbow here.
I love
in my opinion. But no, and I don't think we'll ever get into that, so it shouldn't be an issue. But
I just had to ask it because I know everyone's like,
no,
right now.
No, so I work with those conservation groups, and so I get to see the kind of inner workings of how they handle their organizations and stuff, and for us in Iowa, we need our funds to stay here. We need to pay for our lobbyist here. We need to pay for habitat work here. I can't have a fundraising event and then have to write a check back to a corporate office, for all the money. I need it to stay here. And we need to be able to control what it's spent on, so that I know I'm not just taking your money, and then it goes to put habitat in Tennessee, or taking your money and it pays for a lobbyist in Missouri. It has to stay.
I know the organization that does that. And it's been a huge frustration to members of the. And it's a great organization that does great work, but that funding model is a big hurdle.
So at that time, Bruce, my buddy there, said, well, you should just start a DSC chapter. I'll help you out. And basically they walked me through how to get this whole thing started. I mean, I would have had no idea how to file for a 501c3. Yeah. I don't know any of this stuff. Like I told you at the beginning, I'm a nobody, but I've muddled my way through getting this thing started, and got huge support from them on the front end doing that. So basically what started the Iowa Sportsman Club is I was mad. Skip fueled that anger. Yeah, and then Bruce came in and showed me a way to actually turn it into something constructive.
Wow.
And so at the beginning, I was just asking people like, hey, we're starting this. I asked all my friends that were like-minded, you're going to be on the board. You don't know what the board is yet. Don't worry about it. You're on the board, right? And then they've kind of seen as we went through, like, okay, I see what's going on now. And
so, what do you?
And then at the beginning, I was just asking people, like, we want to offer a megaphone for Iowa hunters and anglers for anything wildlife related in Iowa, we want to offer a megaphone for you at the Capitol. And we're going to hire a lobbyist, which we did when we had no money. We hired a lobbyist and just kind of went for it. Phil is fantastic. Or Phil Jennery. He has helped us build real relationships at the Capitol. A lot of people, when something comes up, I'll get messages mad. How come you don't have the pitchforks out storming the Capitol, screaming about this issue and whatever? We are, but we like to do this stuff behind the scenes so I don't make anybody feel attacked. Yeah. And we've built some really great relationships at the Capitol to where I can call you, I can text you, we can have this discussion. I can explain to you why if you go down this road with this bill, you're going to get hundreds of emails. Yeah.
I've tried to explain this locally to people. When they say, I'm gonna talk to the city council member or the school board member, blah blah blah, blah, and if they don't, they're not going to get reelected. I said, ooh, if you do that, they'll be defensive. What you should do is, hey, this is the kind of person we want to elect. Yep. Will you fill in that role? Yep. And a lot more like, let's be yes people.
Well, and think about it. If you're in their shoes, if you're a state senator and one person calls you from their couch to scream at you, you're probably going to be looking for, how do I get off of this phone call? And I really don't care what you're screaming about. This isn't the way you handle things, right? Well, the truth is, the way you handle things is you have a lobbyist to represent thousands of people, and their one voice comes to that legislator through the lobbyist, and we can have a conversation about, here's what several thousand people, several thousand of your constituents think. That's the route, right? That's just how it works. So that's what we did. Yeah, and Phil, like I said, Phil is phenomenal. Thank you for doing it. He has helped us out tremendously.
That's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, the only thing that I've done is... How much
you get paid?
No, the only thing that I've done is coordinate. I just coordinate. You know, it's all great people, and I'm just trying to coordinate. And
I'm sure it's cost you a lot of time and money.
Skip has given us a lot of ideas. Phil has done a great job at working up at the Capitol. Our board is awesome. We're just trying to coordinate it all into one effort and make sure everybody's marching the same direction.
Yeah. One thing I want to hit on here, because listeners might be like, oh, that's really great for hunters and anglers in Iowa, but I'm not one of those. Can we talk a little bit about how, what you're doing is good for everybody?
Well, I think if anybody is listening to you on this podcast, or if anybody is paying attention to what the Iowa Sportsman Club is doing, they probably have some sort of feeling of wanting to see wildlife, enjoying wildlife, wanting to see, quality habitat in the state. And if that's the case, you don't have to be a hunter and an angler to be able to enjoy that. But the truth is, hunters and anglers are the ones that are paying for that. And regardless of whether you actually hunt or fish, if you like wildlife, if you like seeing wildlife, you should thank a hunter because he's the one that paid for it. And that's, through tag sales. But again, an organization like the Iowa Sportsman Club is only funded by hunters that give money to it. They give money to the Iowa Sportsman Club to try and bolster our legislation and our habitat in the state. It's money coming right out of hunters' pockets, not just through tag sales and a percentage. Right. This is, I'm handing you a check for $2,000 and I'm getting nothing in return except that I'm standing up for wildlife and conservation. So
interesting. What would be interesting to me for that, talking on that conservation, because hunters and anglers should pay for it to some degree because they enjoy it.
We want to.
But what about this idea just popped in my head? People write in, tell me how bad this idea is. Anybody who displaces a certain amount of wildlife. So whether you're building a giant warehouse or a data center, or you have a row crop field that can't sustain real life.
Kind of like the Iowa Wetland Mitigation Bank.
Yeah. But then let's say you have a lavender farm. So you apply for an exception. You say, actually, I've got a lot of wildlife and I don't keep deer off my farm, or I don't, I've got, look at this, and this, you can see this many species. You can actually do an application of it'd probably have to be a tax, but it'd be like a teeny tiny little tax. You're talking about like a 0.001% of your property value kind of thing. And then it would end up going to fund public land, that's
management work or something.
Yes.
So this falls along with what I will is and the conversation
that's
conversations that we've had there. And I'll just tell you the truth. What's been told to me right off the bat is, well, we're Republicans. We're in the business of lowering taxes, not raising taxes, and that's what to fund Iowa. That's where it would come from, right? It would be all Iowans paying for our wildlife and our habitat, our natural resources.
Man, I just came up with Iowans.
It would be all Iowans paying for it, and we voted that we wanted to.
Yeah.
But we're in a situation too where I understand we want to cut taxes, but in this situation, this is a bipartisan thing that all Iowans want.
Right.
And so I think maybe we can work around that a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is where, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone else. We got to stop complaining about taxes all the time because there are some good taxes.
Yeah.
Like not all taxes
Well,
are bad. There's
I
some
just
bad
said
ones,
that.
but there's some good ones.
We
too.
talked about who funds habitat and wildlife conservation. It's the hunters because we want to.
Right.
And it is somewhat, but not solely driven by, I just want to shoot more deer. It's not a bloodlust thing that we're driving. I think that our state looks better. I enjoy it more. Yeah. I feel more calm and peace when I am in that natural habitat than, again, we are farmer first. I want to preface this, but then when I'm driving through hundreds of acres of monoculture that's been drenched in glyphosate for years, it's just, it's a different thing. And I think we can have both. We can drive our economy, but also have it be beautiful too.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
Man, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And in terms of like moving the needle, it's not a small deal when someone puts 500 square foot of pollinator in their yard.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to a good looking little pollinator, tons of life in that
And I
pollinator.
think
But what
people
you're doing,
brush that off too.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
yeah, totally. But what you're doing is you are taking the bull by the horns and saying, we're going to drag this needle across, across this graph one way or another.
The Iowa Sportsman Club, on a small scale, we're doing our own habitat projects, right? Like we just funded one it's in the Rathbun watershed. It's by Sheraton, south of Sheraton. It's a native prairie planting and invasive species removal.
Is that with the Habitat Association?
Yeah. Yep. So we worked with Aaron Warbritton and them, and he kind of helped identify that project, and we'll continue to do things like that. But we're talking about 140 acres, down there that we're improving the habitat. We're paying for it. The Iowa Sportsman Club is paying for it to be improved, and it's public access, so Iowans can all go enjoy it. Right? That's very small scale. Personally, I just planted. A few years ago, I planted that native grass mix by my house. I took out 15 acres worth of row crop. Wasn't very good dirt. Planted it in native grasses and. That's private land. I get to enjoy it, but I always thought at the time... It
elevates the surrounding ecosystem.
Yeah, and at the time, I had lived there for 10 years. I had seen one pheasant and 0 quail in that 10 years of living there. The one pheasant that I saw, I came around the corner by the house, and I saw it down in the ditch, sitting down there. I was like, oh, sweet, a pheasant. I haven't seen a pheasant here ever. And I drove and I went to go up my driveway and I turned around and looked and I watched a guy in a truck pull down the road, roll down the window, throw out a shotgun, boom, shot the pheasant right there in the ditch. It was the one pheasant I had ever seen by my house.
Crazy.
And we planted this native grass mix a few years ago. And at the time it was kind of like, well, it's not good row crop ground. I'm going to buy into if you build it, they will come.
Was it CRP or you're just...
No, just our own mix. Don't make any money on it. But planted it, and within the first 12 months, I started hearing quail. Now, every single morning, if I walk out on the front porch, I can have my cup of coffee and...
That's amazing.
You can just hear him out there.
Yeah.
And the other day I was coming down the drive or down the road, and here's a bunch of quail running down the side of the road by our house, and I stopped, rolled down the windows. My kids got to sit there and watch them at 5 feet or something. But that's my own personal enjoyment. Large scale, it's going to have to be at the legislature. It's a large scale. It's going to have to be something like I Will or programs like that. If we're going to actually make a huge difference, that's where we're going to make it.
Yeah, I would say actually it has to congruently come from the legislation and normal Iowans who say like, the way we're headed is not a good direction. And just to paint a picture, you guys can yell at me all you want, but the way Iowa is headed, the graph, if you look at the graph in the direction that it's headed, nobody lives here, and it's all row crop driven by AI tractors. I'm not kidding. Give it 75 years. Why would anybody live here if
we've
no one
already
else
been
does?
on that.
There's no
we've
industry.
already been on that trajectory for the last 100 years.
And I'm not anti-AI. I'm not anti-efficient farming. I'm not any of these things. But it's a direction that we're headed. And my dad was, just as much as he was a conservationist of ecology, he was a conservationist of small, not even small farm, but neighborly
small
culture.
Scale farming is dead.
Yes,
right?
and the culture.
Farming communities.
Yes, thank you. And so these farming communities that basically like they kind of pretend exist still, but they don't like really exist.
That's what I would love to do full time is farm, but I can't. Right. I can't. And that's not a bitter thing to say. It's just the truth of it.
It's just reality.
And it's not a bad thing. It's driving our economy. It's a good thing. But we've created this monster that sooner or later you got to try and keep up with the demand now.
Yeah.
Demand is always going to grow. So now can our farmers keep up with the demand as in our current situation?
Yeah. I totally agree. All right. So before we take off, I want to know about the raffle. You explained it to me the other day. It's something that Iowa Sportsman Club is doing to raise money and doing a really good job at it. So fill us in. What's going on there? Yeah.
So again, the Iowa Sportsman Club is not that old, right? We don't have a 50,000 member base, and so we don't have a huge following. I think there's a lot of people that like what we're doing, but we don't have a huge following. And because I work full-time in the hunting, shooting, fishing space, I end up building a lot of relationships and having access to a lot of great companies that will donate to our cause and try and help out. But what I've realized over the last few years is that I can go out and find 10 guns to get donated, or these 5 awesome hunting trips, or this whatever it might be, and we might put up this raffle like we have now, a gun raffle, and we might make $2,000 or something. Well, in that case, I could have just sold the guns or sold the bow and not had to, So what we've done here is we've partnered with another group, but it's basically a platform to where the Iowa Sportsman Club can provide the guns or the bows or the products, whatever it is, for our raffle, but we can spread the wealth out a little bit. So like the IBA, they have a platform on our raffle. They didn't have to spend a dime. They don't provide any of the guns or any of the product or any of the stuff we're raffling. But if you want to support the IBA, you go buy your raffle tickets, and there's a little drop-down menu, and just click support the IBA. So now they can send it out to their member base. Doesn't cost them a dime, but it promotes bringing money into the IBA. Same thing with the Habitat Association. I've got a page on there already built for Hoxie Native Seeds. So some of these different groups, the Southern Iowa Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is a part of it as well. And so now we can take, one group of raffle items and spread the wealth out between a bunch of different organizations, and maybe grow it and do a little bit more work here specifically in Iowa. So
love that,
man. Yeah, that is fantastic. How does anybody find the raffle?
You can go to isc.conservationraffles.com. That's the logo, Iowa Sportsman's Club, isc.conservationraffles.com. Otherwise, you can probably put that in your show notes or something too.
Yeah, we will.
But definitely, if you're on Facebook, go to the Iowa Sportsman's Club and just follow us. That's where you can follow along with everything we have going on. Like I have told you guys before, I am not a social media person. I specifically stay off of it. So it's not the probably most attractive Facebook page you're ever going to find, but we do try and keep everybody up to date there with everything we're doing, and it's a group effort.
That's awesome. So. Like Facebook pages that are just newsletters, those are the only ones. If I'm not your friend on Facebook, that's the only thing I follow is Facebook pages that are just strictly information. I'm kind of tired of the rest of the stuff. And actually, like we're big on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll get, hundreds of thousands of views in a week, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's not huge, but it's like relevant to what we're doing. But I kind of want to be like, nah, this is a little against what we do, as a nature. But the hard part is like that's where people go to get their information. Sure. So it's like
it's all good.
Yeah.
But so we've got a couple fundraisers too. So we've got the raffle going on. It's going to end September 6th. The raffle is. Also, that same weekend, we have an archery shoot fundraiser, which is near Bussey, Iowa. And we have a car show fundraiser that September 6th weekend near Manila. So if you guys are around those areas, come check us out there. And then we already know our banquet date. Our biggest fundraiser of the year is our March banquet. It's March 6th. So be thinking about when the Deer Classic rolls around. If you're going to go to the Iowa Deer Classic, that Friday night is our banquet. Every year, Friday night of the Iowa Deer Classic in Hy-Vee Hall in conjunction with the Deer Classic. So just log that in memory. Come around next March in Iowa Deer Classic. Think about the Iowa Sportsman Club too. So
man, that's super cool.
Love it.
Well, last question we always ask people, and this is everyone listening. This is coming from someone who is truly moving the needle. Even if Iowa Sportsman Club died today, they've already done tons of work and added tons of benefit to Iowa's ecology, for deer hunting, for habitat. So if you could snap your fingers, change one thing about the world, what would you change?
Right off the top of my head, it would probably be something evangelical. I guess getting the word of God out there. But I think for the sake of this argument, something more habitat related. And I think if I could just get everybody to think about habitat, to think about wildlife, when they're out there every day. If you own a piece of dirt, it doesn't take that much to set aside part of it for wildlife. Yep. Whether you're a hunter or not, there's opportunities across the state with our state. If funding is an issue, contact your local NRCS or FSA office. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Perfect example. Our farm by Atumwa, it was there's a field of 90 acres of it that was basically not a square field. It's all timber and hills and stuff, but it was basically 100% brome when we got it, and that was fine. It used to be an old rock quarry, so they just had brome and they were getting hay off of it, and it was just a kind of a desert, right? Ecological desert. All 90 of those acres are now doing something producing wildlife. Brome has been eliminated from the landscape as of this spring. We planted the last 39 acres of that, got killed off and planted into native prairie mix. And
that's cool.
That was basically funded by the state. I didn't make any money off of it, but it changed 39 acres of brome into 39 acres of native prairie, native habitat that benefits me. I like it, but it benefits the wildlife, and it didn't cost me a dime to do. So just think about ways that you can benefit or add a little bit of habitat. Like I said, they're at the house. If you build it, they will come, and it doesn't have to be that much to give wildlife a foothold. So,
man,
yeah, well said.
We super love that with just thinking about it, and we don't even have to do that much. But it's interesting if every person thought about native habitat and the ecology as much as it affects their life. Yep. Most of us would think about it a lot more than we do, because we're just so out of proportion on it. So we really appreciate you coming on. I mean, you basically led right into our following tagline, but you guys already know, just like Tayler Riggen is doing, man, it just takes one person, because conservation happens one mind at a time.